Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my prediction for the upcoming death battle between Thor and Wonder Woman. In this video, I will cover the characters' backstories, their powers and capabilities, why these characters were paired against each other, and then finally, my prediction for who I think is going to win. For those of you wondering where my top 14 death battles of Season 3 video is, don't worry, it's literally 95% done. I just haven't had time to wrap it up due to my schedule being consumed by research for these two characters. Speaking of which, for this and all future predictions, I'm going to detail exactly what and how much I was able to research. For this match, I focused my efforts on their official comic books. The reason for this is that the primary methodology Death Battle employs when compiling information for characters is that they first establish a canon. It is from this canon that they derive the general idea of what the character can and cannot do. They then expand to look at all the other material that is not part of the main canon, and they decide whether or not to include it based off of how true it is to the source material. As such, the most important thing for me to research is the canon, which for these characters is their comic books. First, I did Wonder Woman and managed to cover a solid 95% of her post-crisis comic book appearances. For Thor, I was only able to cover about 65% of his comic book appearances, due entirely to the fact that he just has way more comics than Wonder Woman. I mean, the dude has been consistently appearing in comics since 1962. That's 55 years worth of comics, Jesus Christ. But despite that, I still covered enough of both characters that I am very confident in who I think is going to win. Also, this video is not going to be all that high quality in terms of the visuals, due to my life being super hectic of late and I just didn't have time to edit properly. So apologies in advance for that. With all that said, let's get into it. First up is Thor, God of Thunder. In another dimension connected to Earth by a rainbow bridge is the magical realm of Asgard. This land is controlled by a godlike race of warriors called Asgardians, who are ruled by their all-powerful leader, Odin. But all was not well in paradise. It had been prophesied that Asgard would be annihilated in a cataclysmic war called Ragnarok. Odin, of course, wanted to avoid this, so he sought to sire a son so powerful that he could change fate and prevent Ragnarok. But in order for this son to be strong enough to do this, he would need a powerful mother as well. So Odin hooked up with Gaia, who is literally just the physical embodiment of Earth. And once their child was born, he was named Thor. Thor was trained from a very young age in the arts of war, and it wasn't long before Thor became the most powerful and capable warrior in Asgard. His feats were many and his battles legendary. He was so impressive that he was deemed worthy to wield Asgard's most powerful weapon, a warhammer called Mjolnir. However, while Thor was certainly impressive, he thought so as well, and as such, he developed a bit of a superiority complex. In order to deal with this, Odin temporarily banished Thor to Earth so that way he could learn humility. During his stay on Earth, Thor quickly became one of the planet's greatest defenders, and he was even a founding member of the Avengers. For many years to come, Thor would defend both Asgard and Earth from all manner of threats. He even managed to save Asgard from Ragnarok, more or less. And that's pretty much Thor's story. Before I cover Thor's abilities, I feel the need to discuss Mjolnir because a lot of Thor's feats don't make sense if you don't understand Mjolnir. So, let's get into it. I won't lie, Mjolnir's history is actually more complicated than Thor's, but I'll try to keep it brief. At the dawn of time, a cosmic storm the size of a galaxy rampaged across the universe, destroying everything in its path. It blew comets off course, ripped worlds from their orbit, and snuffed out stars like flickering candles. And the storm only grew more powerful over time. Eventually, it came to Asgard, and it was up to Odin to stop it. He brought the full fury of the Odin Force to bear against this storm. The Odin Force is an incredible pool of magical power that pretty much made Odin omnipotent. Even so, it took several days of non-stop battle before the storm showed a moment of weakness. In that moment, Odin threw a chunk of Uru metal into the heart of the star. Uru is a material unique to Asgard, and it has several notable properties. It is extremely durable, can absorb energy, and has a very special interaction with magic. Specifically, the more mystical power the material is exposed to, the more durable and stable it becomes. So Odin threw a chunk of Uru into the heart of the storm, and then he used the Odin Force to seal the storm inside of that chunk. He then sent the chunk to the dwarves and commanded them to forge it into a weapon. But there was a problem. Remember how Uru gets more durable the more magic it's exposed to? Well, this chunk had just had the Odin Force poured into it, which is one of the most potent magics in the universe, and a galaxy-sized storm had just been sealed inside it. So at this point, the chunk was practically indestructible, which meant that none of the dwarves' regular forges could actually mold the material. So instead, they used the core of a dying star as the forge, as it was the only thing intense enough to mold the Uru. So they beat the metal into a symmetrical shape and called it a warhammer. Actually, they called it Mjolnir, which literally just means crusher. Upon acquiring his new hammer, Odin then enchanted it with a number of different spells, the most significant of which makes it so that none could wield Mjolnir unless they are worthy. And apparently, Thor qualified as worthy, so he gets to wield it. That's the origin. Now let's get into what the hammer can do. First off, it is practically indestructible. It can endure energy attacks that vaporize whole planets, and even Wolverine's adamantium claws can't put a scratch in it. The hammer's power as a melee weapon is very impressive, as it is said to be capable of smashing planets like pebbles. In addition, the power of the cosmic storm can be called upon for a number of benefits, the first of which being that the wielder of Mjolnir is granted complete control over all sorts of weather, including tornadoes and hurricanes. In fact, the storms Thor summons can eclipse entire planets. Using this power, Thor can even summon forth bolts of deadly lightning. This lightning can be ridiculously powerful, especially when Thor channels the lightning through Mjolnir. You see, Mjolnir has the special ability to absorb, amplify, and redirect pretty much any form of energy. So by having the lightning strike Mjolnir first and then firing it at his enemies, Thor can drastically boost the power of said lightning. When he gets serious, Thor can fire bolts of lightning so powerful that they blast halfway through planets. Mjolnir also grants Thor immunity to electricity. In addition, Thor can use Mjolnir to grant himself the power of flight through a number of different means. Mjolnir by itself grants straight up levitation, but Thor can also spin the hammer so fast that he can fly like a helicopter, but most impressively, Thor can throw his hammer at incredible speeds and then just let it drag him along for the ride. This is easily Thor's fastest means of flight, as he has been clocked going 3 times the speed of light with this technique. Also, it's worth noting that Thor's main method of attack with Mjolnir is to throw it at his foes. It will then always return to his hand thanks to one of the many enchantments placed upon it. In fact, Mjolnir was smashed through whole planets to return to Thor. In addition, when thrown, Thor can command his hammer to home in on targets. Mjolnir also has a number of defensive applications. Thor can rapidly spin it to form a shield that blocks projectiles, and he can also use Mjolnir to warp the fabric of space to form 9 impregnable dimensional barriers around himself. Now is a pretty good time to mention that Mjolnir can warp the fabric of space and time. Thor can use this to open portals to anywhere in the universe, and he can just straight up teleport. He can even create dimensional warps that trap enemies outside of space and time. If that weren't enough, by spinning Mjolnir faster than light, Thor is able to time travel. In one instance, he was even able to stop time in a localized area. But back to its offensive qualities, Mjolnir can fire a variety of different energy blasts, but the most impressive of these is the God Blast. By channeling the energy of his own godly life force, Thor can fire from his hammer a beam of energy so powerful that it can slay immortal gods. Even Galactus, that guy who goes around eating planets, can be killed by this attack. Mjolnir also has a number of other random powers, most of which are pretty dumb, but here are the few useful ones. Mjolnir can act as a powerful magnet, and it can even channel the Earth's magnetic field to magnetize enemies. Mjolnir can fire special energy waves that accelerate the healing process, it can summon energy waves that paralyze foes, and Mjolnir can even go full-blown Majora's Mask and summon forth planetoids to drop on enemy heads. That's Mjolnir. Now let's talk about Thor. All Asgardians have superhuman strength, speed, and durability, including Thor. In fact, Asgardians have bones and muscles 3 times more dense than that of human beings, which explains why Thor weighs 640 pounds! In addition, Asgardians have a pretty impressive healing factor. Dr. Doom found in his experiments that he could rip out an Asgardian's heart and they would continue to function for several minutes. On top of that, he found that if he put their heart back into their chest, the Asgardians could make a full recovery. And that's just with regular Asgardians. With more powerful Asgardians, such as Thor, Doom found that they could survive without their hearts for hours on end, which is pretty crazy. In terms of strength, Thor is one of the most physically powerful entities in the Marvel Universe. As such, he has a large number of impressive and ridiculous strength feats. Starting with the minor stuff, Thor has been established to be capable of leveling mountains with his attacks since the early days of his comics, but things get crazier. He was once hit with a weapon that exposed him to the gravity of a neutron star, which has gravity 200 billion times that of Earth. Just holding up his own body would have been like holding up trillions of pounds. But most impressively, he once had an arm wrestling contest with Hercules, who has been established to have strength equal to Thor's. What's impressive is that they were generating enough pressure to throw the planet out of orbit, which, as you may recall from Goku vs. Superman, requires quintillions of tons of force. In terms of speed, Thor regularly moves faster than the eye can track and is capable of throwing his hammer several times the speed of light. In terms of durability, Thor has survived all manner of ridiculous stuff. He is completely bulletproof, survived an energy blast from Thanos that vaporized a planet, and he once survived a trip to the core of the sun. In case you weren't aware, the sun produces over 90 billion megatons of energy every second, so being inside the sun is like tanking millions of nukes rapid fire. And not only did Thor survive this, it didn't even interrupt his conversation. It bothered him that little. In terms of the powers unique to Thor, his heritage as the son of Gaia grants him some power over the Earth, allowing him to do things like cause earthquakes that can span continents. Also, he can talk to frogs. He also has something called the Belt of Strength. He only calls upon this in times of dire need, but wearing it doubles both his and Mjolnir's power. Thor is capable of entering Warrior's Madness, a state in which he multiplies his strength by 10, at the cost of sending Thor into a berserker rampage. Also, in case it wasn't apparent, Thor can survive in the vacuum of space, and he does not need oxygen to live. In terms of his skill and experience, Thor was groomed from birth to be the finest warrior in all of Asgard, which is pretty impressive considering the Asgardians are a warrior race. Thor is highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat and wrestling, as well as a variety of weapons including swords, axes, and hammers. And since Thor has been fighting his entire life, he has thousands of years of combat experience. Now for weaknesses. Without his hammer, Thor's mobility is much more restricted, and while Thor's speed is nothing to be scoffed at, he tends to not bother with dodging a lot of the time, due to his durability being so high that he usually doesn't need to. To be clear, he can and does dodge when he needs to, but he has to think he needs to before he really tries. And while Mjolnir is ridiculously durable, it is not indestructible. It has been damaged and destroyed a number of times over the course of its history, although usually only by cosmic or reality warping entities. That said, should Mjolnir come to harm, that bodes poorly for Thor since his life force is interwoven with Mjolnir. In other words, if Mjolnir is destroyed, so is Thor. And that's pretty much all there is to say about Thor. Next up is Diana Prince, the Wonder Woman. Long ago, in the age of yore, the Greek gods reigned supreme, but all was not well in paradise. Ares, the god of war, had gone insane, and it was only a matter of time before he destroyed the world. So the female gods of Olympus and Hermes created a race of warrior women called the Amazons, whose mission was to bring peace and love to the world, which they totally failed at. As punishment, they were banished to the island nation of Themyscira, forever cut off from the outside world. However, many centuries later, a special child was born among the Amazons called Diana. Originally, it was thought that she was created when the queen of the Amazons made a baby out of clay, and then the gods gave it life. But it was later revealed, that Diana was born the regular way, with the Amazon queen being her mother and Zeus, the king of the gods, being her father. Once she came of age, Diana proved herself to be the greatest Amazon warrior when she won a tournament to decide who would be the ambassador to the outside world. Having won this tournament, Diana was then tasked to accomplish what the Amazons had failed to do all those years ago: bring peace and love to the world. To help her with this goal, Diana was blessed by the gods with a bunch of superpowers, which, when coupled with her Amazon warrior training, made her one of the most capable and powerful beings on the planet. In the process of pursuing her altruistic goal of peace and love, Diana has saved the world on a number of occasions, even stopping the mad god Ares. As her fame grew, the public decided to give her a superhero name, Wonder Woman. To this day, Diana has continued to protect the world from all manner of threat, while simultaneously seeking to better mankind. That's pretty much Wonder Woman's story. Now for what she can do. Diana was granted superhuman strength from Demeter, and let me tell you, figuring out the exact limitations of this strength was a pain. At her best, Wonder Woman has helped move both the Earth and the Moon, but she had extensive help in both cases from far more powerful characters, including Superman, so it's impossible to tell how much she actually contributed to those feats. Thankfully, I was able to find a far more measurable strength feat that also sets an upper limit to Diana's strength. In a battle with a Sinestro clone, a massive bridge got cut in half with a laser, and it was up to Diana to hold up that half of the bridge long enough for the cars on it to escape. She managed to do this, but it took, and I quote, every ounce of her strength. This sets her maximum strength to be in the vicinity of several 100,000 tons. In terms of her speed, I had almost as much trouble. Diana has never been as fast as characters like Flash and Superman, but she does hold her own with them in combat, so figuring out how much slower than them she is was the name of the task, and I was able to do a decent job of that. According to the official DC Comics encyclopedia, Wonder Woman is only capable of sub-light speed movement. You may think it's odd that she can hold her own against light-speed foes when she herself is not light speed, but Wonder Woman actually explains this. She states that while she is not as fast as the likes of Superman, she can still hold her own with him in combat thanks to her warrior training. Whereas he has to think about what he's going to do before he does it, Wonder Woman's actions are automatic muscle memory and require no thought. In terms of durability, Wonder Woman's maximum was, again, very difficult to judge. She has fought people capable of busting planets before, but she has always either lost those fights or she managed to cancel out some aspect of their power. Like she once took a full-strength, fury-boosted punch from Superman that hit her so hard that she was instantly knocked unconscious and flew from the sun to the earth in seconds. However, right before the punch could be thrown, Diana whipped out some kryptonite, which makes it impossible to judge how hard Superman actually hit her. As for her fights with other planet busters, she has always lost. Doomsday broke both her arms with one punch, and Darkseid outright killed her. Thankfully, I was able to find a decently measurable feat that I could use to set an upper spectrum to her durability. She once took a light-speed punch to the face from Reverse Flash, which Diana herself states hurt more than the aforementioned Superman punch. I calculated the force of a light-speed punch ages ago, and I can tell you that it hits with about as much energy as approximately 5.6 million tons of TNT. That's equivalent to 280 of the Fat Man nuclear bombs dropped on Nagasaki. So that's pretty impressive. She also has a small healing factor that heals flesh wounds in minutes and broken bones in only a few hours. In terms of her skill and experience, Diana is an expert in all classical forms of armed and unarmed combat, including axes, swords, bows, spears, and so on. As for experience, Diana is technically only 23, but thanks to one special feat in which she spent 1,000 years fighting demons in Valhalla, Wonder Woman actually has far more combat experience than you might think. Diana also has a few less useful abilities, including the power to talk to animals. Now for her equipment. Diana wields the Bracelets of Submission, a pair of practically indestructible armbands forged from the fragments of Zeus's legendary Aegis. These bracelets can summon forth weapons for Diana, and they can even be slammed together to fire off bolts of lightning. But their most notable feature is that they act as inhibitors for Diana's powers, specifically the powers she has as a daughter of Zeus. By removing these bracelets, Diana gains, quote, the power of Zeus, which seems to boost both her strength and speed. The only downside is that she has a really hard time controlling herself in this state, which makes her far less tactical and precise than she normally is. Regardless, these bracelets are Diana's main defense, and she uses them to block all manner of things from bullets to lasers. On her head, she wears her magical tiara, which can be thrown like a boomerang and will cut through most mundane materials. At her hip is the Lasso of Truth. Obviously, anyone who is caught in this lasso is forced to tell the truth, but it also has a number of other powers. It was forged from the girdle of Gaia and is thus practically indestructible. It can be stretched to almost any length, can dispel illusions and insanity, and it's even capable of revealing the pressure points of those it ensnares. And last but not least is Diana's magic sword. This weapon, forged by Hephaestus, is so sharp that it can cut an electron off an atom. This basically means it can cut through almost any mundane material. Now for weaknesses. Diana's defenses have some pretty major holes. Diana herself is not resistant to all forms of harm, which is most evident in the way that she is not bulletproof. This particular bullet to the gut actually put her at death's door. You may think it's odd that Diana can tank nukes like it's nothing, yet bullets can put her down, but there is a way to explain it. Diana's durability is not natural the way it is for Superman. Her durability comes from the magical blessings of her gods, which makes it so that Diana is only superhuman in the ways specifically granted to her by said gods. They gave her resistance to raw force, which lets her endure punches and explosions, but they did nothing for her resistance to precision weapons, which allows things like swords and bullets to harm her as effectively as they would harm a normal human. That's why Diana relies so heavily on her bracelets to block bullets and whatnot. Speaking of which, another flaw in Diana's defenses is her outfit. It usually grants no special defenses and doesn't cover all that much, which means that if a bullet slips past her bracelets, then she has no way to mitigate the damage it will deal. And relying so heavily on her bracelets for defense has its own downsides, most notably being that while they are extremely durable, they do not absorb energy. What this means is that if a powerful blow impacts her bracelets, the kinetic energy of said impact will go right through the bracelets and into her arms. As such, if a blow powerful enough to break her bones were to impact her bracelets, even if her bracelets survive the impact, her arms would still be broken. Also, while her bracelets are incredibly durable, they are not indestructible. They have been broken before, most notably being once when the guns of Eros, the god of love, were able to penetrate them, and the second instance being when the Omega beams of Grail, daughter of Darkseid, were able to shatter them. Furthermore, while Diana's lasso is also supposed to be unbreakable, it too has been broken before, although only by people capable of warping reality and/or breaking the concept of truth, such as Bizarro. Also, despite being Zeus's daughter, Diana has shown a noticeable weakness to electricity. Even after being revealed as the daughter of Zeus, this vulnerability to electricity has persisted. And last but not least, while Diana is capable of holding her breath for superhuman quantities of time, she still needs oxygen to live, and thus cannot survive in outer space for very long. And that's pretty much everything I know about these two characters. Before I get to my prediction, here are the similarities between Thor and Wonder Woman. 1. Marvel vs. DC. 2. Both are some of the most powerful heroes on Earth. 3. Both are godly in nature. 4. Both utilize magic and traditional weaponry in their fighting styles. 5. Both are members of major superhero teams. 6. Both can somewhat talk to animals. 7. Both are superhumanly strong, fast, durable, and tenacious. 8. Both work for gods yet also somehow manage to piss off those gods a lot. 9. Both struggle with the differences between the human and godly aspects of their lives. And 10. Both have fought in death battles in the past. That's all their similarities. Now for my prediction. I think the winner of this death battle will be Thor. This fight was pretty clear-cut for me. Right off the bat, I thought Thor had the edge, and as I researched him, he proved to be far more ridiculous than I could have ever expected. By contrast, as I researched Wonder Woman, she turned out to be far more limited than I initially expected. I thought she was supposed to be as powerful as Superman, yet it turns out she's nowhere near his level. That said, this match isn't an absolute stomp. Wonder Woman's stats, combined with her magical sword, give her the means to kill Thor. But Thor has a far better chance of killing her before she kills him. Starting with their base stats, Thor is by far the superior in strength. He can move planets while she struggles to hold up a bridge. And while she can somewhat augment her strength by removing her bracelets, there is no evidence that doing so can close the massive gap in strength between her and Thor. And even if it did, Thor's belt of strength, when combined with his warrior's madness, can multiply his strength by 20, which puts him light years ahead of Wonder Woman. Moving on to speed, they are a fair bit closer. However, whereas it is specifically stated that Wonder Woman cannot move faster than light, Thor has been shown to be capable of swinging his hammer several times the speed of light. And while it's true that Wonder Woman has held her own with foes that fast in the past, such as Superman and Flash, she was only able to do so because she had the muscle memory of a warrior, whereas Superman and Flash did not. Trouble is, Thor is also a warrior, which means that not only can he match her in muscle memory, he also has the speed advantage, firmly giving the category to Thor. In terms of durability, while Diana can tank hundreds of nukes and only be knocked unconscious, Thor can tank millions of nukes without injury. And while both have minor healing factors, Thor has shown far more resistance to mortal wounds than Diana. Thor gets his heart ripped out and he can survive for hours, whereas Wonder Woman gets a bullet to the gut and is hospitalized. Speaking of which, a well-placed bullet can kill Wonder Woman, whereas Thor is completely bulletproof. Also, since the planet being destroyed is a very real possibility in this fight, it is important to note that Thor does not need oxygen to survive, whereas Diana does. In terms of their arsenals, Thor's is both more versatile and far more powerful. Mjolnir grants Thor a variety of different options in terms of how he wishes to pursue this battle, whereas Wonder Woman is pretty much limited to melee combat. And whereas Thor has a number of different means of shattering whole planets, Wonder Woman has nothing that can even remotely operate on that scale. Then there's the matter of whether Mjolnir could surpass Wonder Woman's bracelets and sword in a direct confrontation, and I think it could. Diana's bracelets were broken by Grail, who has never demonstrated planet-busting potential, so I am certain that Mjolnir, which can bust planets, could break the bracelets as well. Then there's Diana's magic sword. While it's true that the sword can cut through most mundane things, it failed to cut through Diana's own bracelets. Since we just established that Mjolnir trumps those bracelets, it is thus reasonable to conclude that it could trump Diana's sword as well. Next up, while both combatants can fire lightning bolts, Thor's are far more powerful, and whereas Thor is completely immune to electricity, Wonder Woman has shown to be particularly vulnerable to it. In terms of their skill and experience, while Diana may arguably be the more tactical fighter, Thor can be quite cunning when he needs to be, not to mention that Thor has far more combat experience thanks to him being thousands of years older. In summary, while Diana is not without hope, I honestly do think her sword could kill Thor if given the chance. I think Thor just has far too much raw power, both in his base stats and his weaponry, for Wonder Woman to stand a chance. Like if he just opened up with the God Blast, there is nothing Wonder Woman could do. Even if her bracelets could endure such an attack, they only cover a small portion of her body. The rest of her would be incinerated. As such, I think Thor has a solid 75% chance of winning this death battle. Before I wrap up, I'd like to introduce a new segment that I talked about in my last video, in which I play the devil's advocate and describe how I could see Wonder Woman winning. The only way I could see Wonder Woman taking this death battle is if she proves herself to be far faster than anything Thor could react to. Her being stronger or more durable than I thought she was would not win her this match. That would not protect her from the God Blast. The only way she could win this fight is if she killed Thor before he could unleash any of his more dangerous attacks, and the only way she could do that is if she got in close and stabbed him in the face with her super sword. And she can only do that if she can move faster than Thor can swing his hammer, because if Thor gets the chance to swing that hammer, he can most certainly shatter Wonder Woman's sword. It has no special durability, and Mjolnir is gargantually powerful. Problem is, Thor can swing his hammer 3 times faster than light, so the only way for Wonder Woman to stab him is for her to also move that fast or faster. And since it is outright stated in the DC Comics Encyclopedia that she cannot move light speed, she must have a modern feat that I missed in which she is outright stated to be that fast. Not implied, not something that can be interpreted a number of different ways. There needs to be concrete, undeniable evidence that she can move 3 times the speed of light or more. That is the only way she could supersede the encyclopedia. And her being that fast is the only way I could see her winning this match. And that's everything I have to say about this matchup. Reading the Thor comics was definitely the most enjoyable experience I've had researching Marvel. I'm just not the biggest Marvel comics fan, but Thor was pretty fun. That said, this was my first time fully researching a classical DC character, and I can definitely say I like DC more than Marvel. DC just manages to keep a far more fun tone in their comics than Marvel does, and I definitely prefer my superhero comics to be light and fun rather than dark and edgy. And Wonder Woman manages to pull off the whole feminist superhero thing a whole lot better than Miss Marvel ever did. Anywho, I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up. Sorry, again, that this video was so low quality, but life happened and there really wasn't anything I could do. Regardless, like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.